premier place for learning, sharing ideas, and finding practical solutions to global challenges. Many of you know that CGA prides itself on its graduate program, continuing education programs, grant-funded initiatives, and public events such as tonight's. Tomorrow night, we have a very busy this week. We have an event on Putin 2 nights ago. Tonight we have this distinguished visitor, and tomorrow, for those of you who have the time, you can join us for a very important event on statelessness and refugee issues. Anyway, Alon Ben-Meir plays a part in a lot of things here at CGA and has done so for many, many years. He's a senior fellow, professor of Middle East and negotiation courses, among many others. He's also an author, I don't know where he finds the time, of books, as well as a syndicated column every week. He's a media personality. He has been interviewed by whom, even in my office. He's a tireless advocate and seeker of a resolution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And he's a friend to many Middle East leaders and policymakers, such as His Excellency Lukman Faily, who was here in conversation with him shortly after he became ambassador to the United States. I believe it was 2014, right? So we are delighted to have him back. Ambassador Faily combines many different areas. For 20 years, he was in senior management positions in the UK, working in info technology with transnational and US companies. He was an active leader in the Iraqi exile community. His experience transcends diplomacy, business management, infotech, and civic activism. He began his diplomatic career first in the Iraqi Ministry of Foreign Affairs, prior to his appointment as ambassador to Japan, which we were just talking about, and then for the past 4 years as ambassador to the United States. He received his BA and MBA in the United Kingdom. I think he's done lots of postgraduate study as well. He's multilingual, and most important, he's a marathon runner, as well as the dad of 4 boys. So thank you so much for being with us, and please join me in welcoming the ambassador and Alon.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Vera. You always make it so wonderful for me to, you're saying the same thing but sound wonderful when it comes from you. I just want to share with you a thought, because Ambassador Faily was called to come to Baghdad for today, correct? And he somehow managed to change his itinerary and come, because he committed himself to come here tonight. And as a matter of fact, he's going from here directly to Kennedy Airport to go to Baghdad. So I think he deserves the biggest hand just for this effort. I also take special pleasure in telling you that I've known Ambassador Faily from the time you came here, and ever since, like to Washington, D.C., and ever since we met a number of times, quite a few times, we often exchange views about the affairs of the world, especially the Middle East, and we managed to solve just about half of them. So tonight we're going to solve the rest of the problems of the region.
And outside the region as well.
And outside the region. So let me begin by the one question I think people have in their mind, and that is the situation with ISIS. You know, it's been a year since the Iraqi military been planning to recapture the city of Mosul. And the campaign began just a few weeks ago. And I wanted to ask you, what's your take? From where I'm sitting and see it, I don't believe that there's enough Iraqi troops, even with the support of the Shiite militia, from Iran, going, supporting them in the periphery of Mosul, will be enough to be able to capture the city for over 1 million people. It's a very big city. And knowing from the way ISIS has been fighting in Ramadi and was taken over eventually, that this group is going to fight a guerrilla war inside the city, street to street. What is going to happen? What's going to happen to Mosul after this kind of intense fighting?
First of all, let me say good evening, everybody, and it's been a privilege to be here again. And best wishes for your program, leadership program, Global Leaders. I think what we have and what we had to do before and to create, and prior to that, when we liberated Diyala province, to create thereafter, and then Ramadi finally, and making sure that we liberate the key cities. It has shown us that the fight against ISIS is not easy. This is what you might call a hardened organization who's able to think outside the box, willing to go to the nth, willing to sacrifice their lives, willing to sacrifice infrastructure, and every other sacred thing humans believe in, whether it's ideologies, ethnicities, and so on. So we know that. We also know as a government that these places are part of Iraq. So we have responsibility for the citizens. These are not wars conducted across borders, but inside. And it's a mix of traditional war in the sense of an army versus an army. And when we go to the Mosul situation, it becomes like asymmetrical war,
exactly,
which is guerrilla warfare. They have proven in Ramadi that they are willing to use new weapons of booby traps, houses, homes, infrastructures, streets, and so on. And it becomes a very tenacious war for conducting this. We know that much. Well, and therefore, it took us months just to make sure that we surround it, that we contain it. We certainly be able to have an attrition of a type with them, and as and when we can, we sneak out those civilians who are entrapped and wanted to get out. So that's what we will continue doing, because these are our citizens, and at the end of the day, we can't just go about carpet bombing or any other method of mass destruction.
But given what you just said, yes.
So it becomes more complicated in the sense of we need to make sure that all the stakeholders whom we can bring in, we will bring in, such as the Kurdish Peshmerga forces in the north, the tribal Arabs, Jabur, or Janabi, or Shimmer, or other tribes, Arabs in that region. Citizens of Turkmen, who are Shia Turkmen, who were evicted from that place, they need to come back to their homes, so they want to volunteer. Yazidis, Christians, others, they're all currently part of the PMU's, Popular Mobilization Forces, and they all want to contribute. The government has its own city forces, plus regular army, plus strong collaboration from the US and other Western support from the air, plus some intelligence sharing and others who need to be close contact on the ground to help the government. We need all of them to pull in the same direction, planning, so that we minimize the damage of infrastructure and damage of civilians. So that's what we will have to do. There is no other plan, by the way. There is no, we said, well, just leave them there, because who would want to have ISIS next door to them? Who would want, and these are, as I said, they are citizens of our state. We have a responsibility for them. We have to go through this painful process. We will try to minimize damage, but we will have to cleanse Iraq out of ISIS.
This is absolutely true, but you mentioned so many elements of forces that could potentially be able to help and assist in this fight. This amalgamation of all the Kurds, the Christians, and other groups. But the problem with this, there is no central command. As far as I know, there is no specific strategy. Who is in fact conducting? What is the strategy? How to go about it? What is, And then there is the concern that we have is this war, no matter almost under any circumstances, is going to be very protracted. Now, if it's going to take months, if not maybe a year, maybe even more than a year to get to the heart of Mosul, imagine what will happen with this street-to-street fighting. What will happen to the civilian communities where ISIS in fact hide within the civilian communities precisely because they use them as a human shield.
Plus they have things like tunnels, other methods of surprising the other. I'll give you all that, but I'll also say, Alon, is that we as a government have responsibility to manage it. The Prime Minister is Commander-in-Chief. In Tikrit, when he needed to tell the Popular Mobilization Forces to stop, he did. When he wanted the Allies to participate, he did. When he asked the Arab tribes in Anbar to work with him, he did. So this is ongoing. It should help us, and this is what we want to do as well, in the day after scenario in our politics. It's not just an issue of retaking the city. It's how do we go about governing it? How do we go about restructuring it? How do we go about stabilization and redeveloping it thereafter? We need to get the buy-in of all the stakeholders for it. So it's not just an issue of one event. It has to be chain events when we have to manage because of the destruction of ISIS.
This is true, but then you have, all of these groups, they have their own interest. They have their own interest. And so even you get to the point where how you manage the city.
Commonalities of interest and priorities. This is what
but many of these interests do, contradict one another. They are not in cahoots. They are not, for example, take the Sunnis in Iraq itself. Yes, tribal Sunnis would be willing for various reasons to support, but not all tribals are willing to support the Shia central government in Iraq, because from their perspective, and I'm hearing some people saying, some of them are saying, we prefer ISIS versus the central Shia government.
They've tried this. They've tried ISIS, and they've seen that self-destruct of ISIS hasn't allowed for diversity of any type, whether it's Sunnis or minorities or others. So there is that aspect of it. There is another aspect of it is, could they coexist with other communities while staying under ISIS? So what we have done in the government is, in Anbar, the Prime Minister asked his authority, full authority, as a Prime Minister, to the provisional governor, to the province governor, who's from that province, who's pure Sunni Arab, and handed his authority and said, you have my authority in getting to resolve the issues. So we will do that. We'll do that again. We did it in Salahadi. The government had to participate and get involved. Actually, it's a bit more complicated than you just said, because there is what you call an inter-tribal parliament.
Of course, yes.
So we have to manage the inter-tribal parliament as well. So this is the type of the complexity of that region. Requires tenaciousness, focus. You need to make sure that the politics support it. There is no plan B. What do you say? You leave ISIS as is, then unfortunately further destruction of minorities, heritage, and everything else. What does that help?
But that's the point. Let us say, and I believe eventually ISIS will be defeated.
ISIS has its own self-destruct. That's not the issue. The issue is how much other collateral damage does it cause with itself. That's what we want to present.
Well, whether self-defeating or not, I think eventually will be defeated. It may take another year or two. The problem today is what is going to happen post ISIS defeat. And this is what I've been looking into, and that is when we are reviewing, for example, and I spoke to you just briefly a while ago about the Sunni in Iraq. What prospect do they have? ISIS is defeated, and they have tremendous distaste for the central government, specifically during the Maliki, for 8 years.
I think we've gone through that. I think we've all.
Do you really feel that the Sunni actually forgot what happened, how they were treated by Maliki government for over 8 years?
I'll tell you what, the region itself, one of the characteristics of the region is that people don't forget. So
we Iraqis, incidentally, mind you, we are both Iraqis, so we can argue.
Actually, two Iraqis may have 3 ideas.
Worse than the Jews.
So you can't say that out.
No, we're saying, we have put 3 Jews in one room, we end up with 6 opinions. So.
No, I think I'll tell you, the issues is not just of Sunnis and Shias. Now they have all realized they need the other. They still expect the other to do more. They still expect others to apologize or sort of give up or allow more authority to the other side. That's still there. We need to mature to the higher level. I give you that. But at the same time, we all realize now we need each other to coexist. That's already taking place at a very high cost, I would say, inefficiency sometimes, but social coexistence is now cleared by all sides. But to talk about the victimization here, let me give you another side of it, which is primarily all the car bombings take place in Shia towns and Shia streets and markets and the civilian. So does that mean that they have the right to revenge? Certainly not. We need each other, and people now recognize that. The Kurds recognize it, others recognize it. There has been some, I would say, even irreversible damage with ISIS. I give you that. In the sense of minorities, Yazidis, Christians feel that they were alienated, and so on. But what do we do moving forward? This is what we need to realize. We need to face the challenge and say, we need to get our game, we need to focus on the challenges we both have. We have made mistakes, we all have made mistakes. Politically, those who make mistakes have paid heavy price for them politically. So it's a democratic country.
Yeah.
But we need to refine it, we need to improve on it.
But even then, you suggest that we need each other, and so there is a need to cooperate.
Well, it's true.
Well, no, I'm not questioning the fact that they need it, but this is probably how I see it is more or less a political convenience. They need each other because there's a common enemy, so let's fight the common enemy, which is fine. But then what happens after that? As the fight,
we're already doing that. My point is, we didn't barge into Anbar or Tikrit, and we had to go through a very meticulous process at the very high cost of our own army, at the very high cost of our own civilians, who do support the volunteers, because we wanted to make sure that the day after scenario, the politics aspect of it is done. However, without getting support from the international community in reconstruction, then unfortunately you have a massive population without proper homes, or the IDPs, internally displaced, just under 3 million. Without addressing that issue, then you will have a destabilizing factor moving onward. These are important factors. I think we've gone beyond the issue of accepting the other or the day after scenario and the politics aspect of it. We may have agreed on that. What we need is make sure that we tick every box in the infrastructure need, in the political process need, and so on. We need to do that. We're still going through that. We're doing this all alone, by the way. We're doing this alone while we are in a region which is not democratic, while we have terrorism, which is the most vicious aspect, while 175,000 US troops were there and they weren't able fully to cleanse ISIS out. So this is the scale of the challenge we have.
In the interim, in the meantime, as all of this is taking place in the fight against ISIS, Sunnis in Iraq and the Shias still continue to bomb each other as of the day before. Well, wait a second. Last week,
that's a very simple view.
Ambassador.
The Israelis and the Palestinians.
No. I'm talking about the ongoing. But this is ongoing. This has been going on for a long time. This is not just. Even though
I will challenge those who say these are millennium problems or centuries problems. I can totally reverse it. Centuries coexistence, centuries of intermarriages. Why don't you look at that aspect of it as well? I'm not saying, I would like to rephrase it. Humanities now require us to go beyond the areas of what makes us difference. We need to go into the virtual concept. We need to go into what communities
ideally, yes, ideally, but is it applicable? But is it applicable to the reality today in Iraq? How do you do that? How are you? Let me
rephrase it. 12 years now, 13 years since we had the 2003. US came in, the state collapsed. Not the government, the whole state.
Right.
Now we're trying to rebuild the state. After 12 years, we had more than 10 elections. We had change of prime minister in no single bullet. Last 2 weeks, we had demonstrations at the highest. Nobody was killed or anything like that. Nobody was injured. It tells you that we have learned in a harsh way what democracy is about. It's a painful process. You guys, America, didn't show us how hard it is. You didn't tell us how hard it is, seriously. So we will know that. We're happy to go through that painful process. We need support. While we have a sectarian tumor going in the whole region called ISIS, Sunni-Shia, Iran versus Saudi Arabia, all of those geopolitics is going through polarizing that society. In the midst of all that, you have as a society who is seeking democracy, seeking coexistence, with all the baggage which we had to bring with us. That's the reality of it. Let's look at that aspect of it.
But then again, I want to go back to the central issue here. You defeat ISIS. Is there a plan? Do we know? Is your prime minister has a vision? What is going to happen 2 years down the line? ISIS is defeated. Mosul is recaptured. What's then?
No,
how do you see Iraq 2 years down the line after the defeat of ISIS? What's going to happen?
I would say is somewhat better in the sense of we had the pride that we got rid of ISIS ourselves. We had to pay high costs for it. By the way, let me rephrase it. It's easy for us to ask the Arab countries to come in with their armies, US troops to come in with their armies, other groups on the ground, and let's say, you do the fighting for us. That's not politically costly. We can afford that.
But they refused. They didn't want to send troops.
I can assure you, we can easily entice others to come in with the troops. But they will come in with their baggage. They will also come in, which will have a longer, adverse impact on our politics moving forward.
But you already have 4,500 American advisor troops already, and the president is already considering to send additional number of few thousand more.
Which we want them for training, because you have to bear in mind, in 2003, the Kurdish state collapsed. 2011, US troops leave. No single fighter plane. The Iraqi government does not have a single fighter plane while the US troops lose, while they have 175,000. A vacuum is created because of our political problems, your political discourses here in 2008 elections and so on. I'll give you that, but let's move on forward. Do we allow ISIS to destroy not just Iraq and Syria? And I personally believe this is a humanitarian problem, human problem in the sense that these are heritage of humanity, not just heritage of the Iraqis or heritage of the Syrians. The whole civilization aspects, signatures, all that part of the world.
Let's just leave that for a moment. Let's go back. ISIS, after all, is also the enemy of the European community, and the United States, for that matter. Do you feel that the European community, the United States, have done enough? Could they have done more? Is there room to do a great deal more now?
Respectively, I think they know now that they thought that this is more a domestic issue or a regional, or at best it can be contained. Now they know that the IDP issue, the refugee issue alone, and their close proximity to Europe has been a tremendous burden on them. They also realize that with the terrorist act taking place in Belgium, Paris, and others, that no one is immune from it, and that the enemy is not what you might call an alien enemy. It's homegrown or internal. So you need to get your politics right as well. So in that sense, yes, I think I don't think they still recognize this as a global problem. Maybe they get it mentally, but I don't think the procedures or making sure.
But is there any context now? I mean, I know that the Iraqi government are talking to the EU. What are you asking them to do?
Well, we're saying to them that you have the problem as we have. We have jihadists coming in from Europe and others who hold American, British, French, other passports. So you need to get your processes in place. You also need to make sure that you don't export the problems you have in Europe. You need to address these Europe itself, prevent them from traveling, for example. We're asking Turkey and other countries to make sure that they don't come in through those routes to go to Syria or Iraq. So we need their support. We need intelligence sharing. We need to profile. These are the levels in one side. And we have the actual war. We are the only country in the world where we are receiving support, and we're seeking support for us to conduct this war in an enemy which we face. They are not a virtual, they're not what you might call a fifth column or any kind of sleeper cells or anything like that. They are there in front of you. So we need help in containing them. Don't give them any safe haven for plan or whatever.
So you mentioned before that they obviously we need each other, and so they are cooperating. Do you feel that Iraq, in fact, after this, could be restored as a single country, united as it used to be before?
In a sense of before, which is a strong central government and in the period of Saddam Hussein or others? No. That certainly, I think, is irreversible. Communities don't want it like that. The Constitution talks about federalism, democracy, decentralization. So we're already seeking that new vision. But also in a sense of fragmented Iraq, I don't think so as well, because the need element of it, the development they need for each other. And I think that we've matured up to that level now. Still, we have expectations of other communities to give more than for us to give. That's an issue.
But you say us being the central government?
No, I'm talking about communities internally. Central government also, they want to decentralize, but it's going about in a one way. We're still not clear how efficient are we going that way and exactly what it takes for decentralization. You have to bear in mind as well is during Saddam's rule for decades, people were not allowed to make decisions. Provisional governors, managers, director generals levels and others were not allowed to make decisions. Now, decentralization means they have to make decisions. Getting rid of key ministries, which is to do with their own federal ministries, municipals and other things like health, education, and others, for them to be managed locally is not an easy process for us. People have expectations that central government makes decisions for us. We are saying to them, that's no longer our responsibility. You need to have, you get your budgets, but you need to manage it better.
And so are you suggesting now that the government in Iraq is open to, for example, we talked a little earlier about the Kurds in Iraq. Based on everything we know, the Kurds are absolutely committed to themselves and the United States knows this only too well, that they will not, almost under any circumstances, they may cooperate now, they may join the fight against ISIS because it serves their interest, but under no circumstances will they relinquish their autonomous rule. As a matter of fact, in talking to top officials of them, I was told directly, clearly, we will seek independence, comes what may, and we are only waiting to see how how the problem with ISIS will be resolved. And the same thing I might say, discuss that with you, we have disagreement on the future of the Sunnis in Iraq. Will the Sunni community after ISIS, in fact, will be prepared to just go back to business as usual, which was never usual to begin with?
What about the Shia?
But the Shia already have established central government, and they are basically in control. They have already a government.
You have the presidents, you have the key ministers, you have the key generals, all Sunnis or Kurds or others as well. What about people like me who are Kurds and Shia? Where do we fit it?
No, but are you suggesting that the Kurds, in fact, will relinquish or will not want to be autonomous?
It's not the issue of relinquishment. They voted for the Constitution 2005, which talks about a federal Iraq, where there is federal entity. They already have the infrastructure for the three provinces as a federal entity, as they're all self-governing in one way, it's called KRG, Kurdistan Regional Government. They already have that. So if we're talking about common defense, common sort of foreign policy and others, this is what we need to work with each other. And the same thing with the oil resources as wealth of the whole state and the country, not just wealth of certain provinces. We need to work on the politics of that. On the Sunni part we talk about, which is primarily Arab Sunnis talk about, not Sunnis, because Kurds are Sunnis as well.
I'm talking about the Sunni, non-related to the Kurdish background, but not the Kurdish background.
Is sort of Muslim Sunnis or Shia aspect of it. Kurds are Sunnis as well.
That's
but
true.
On the Sunnis aspect of it and the Kurdish aspect of it, they are landlocked. Do you want them to have a landlocked state? I don't think that's beneficial. What about the infrastructure? Do they have the infrastructure for it? I don't think they have. Do they not have an interdependence?
Are you suggesting the Kurds don't have infrastructure of state? I think they have it all. I don't think they're missing anything for that matter.
So
you
are they waiting for?
Pardon?
I'm a Kurd. I know my.
No, but not only a Kurd. You've been in Erbil 100 times.
So
are you suggesting that the Kurds really are missing anything today? They have, for all intent and purposes, they are independent state. They run their affairs as they see fit. They have their permission.
If they had the ability to have independence, they would have done it before 2003.
No, but they're not interested. You know,
Why?
why?
Because the geopolitics
Because it
is
doesn't
not.
serve their interest now.
So the geopolitics does not help you, which means that the environment may not be there, which means you need the other. So let's use that to help each other.
But that is an assumption.
What's
that
the
they need.
point of me if I'm central Baghdad? If I want the Kurds to be independent, while I don't have a good relationship with them? What's the benefit for me? I have issues of water. What's the benefit of me that I can't access to water?
You know, you go back to
So
Saddam Hussein
there is
era.
a need element, not just a desire. There is a need element.
Well, I would agree to one thing, that at one point there will be some cooperation. But my feeling is this.
We're
and this-
states. We need each other.
No.
It's not the America versus Iraq.
Yeah, but the
5,000
central government,
5,000 miles away.
the central government in Baghdad, they say we need each other, but they need it their own way. And that's been the case under Maliki. You cannot deny the fact that Maliki has been anything but.
No, Maliki is here is considered as the fall guy for all of these issues. The problems are there even after the second term of Prime Minister Maliki, who was elected. Let's get the democracy right first. He was elected. He had 700,000 votes when he won the third term, but he didn't get it because the politics didn't allow it, the democracy and so on. It's a collaboration. So we're going through this painful process. It's not easy. We need to develop it better. We have wars, we have economical challenges, we are in a non-democratic region, and we still want to see that. So I think you need to give us some credit here.
Well, no, I'm giving you a lot of credit because I think there was some progress in Iraq. But I'm not prepared to go as far as to
But
say
you have to bear in
that
mind-
Iraq is today's full-fledged
No,
democracy.
I can assure you.
You know.
Let me say this on the record. The country is still going through so much challenges. The jury is still out as to what should it look like in 5 or 10 years. I give you that. So
Right.
I give you that. But as I'm saying, we have responsibility to do something now. We have a massive baggage which we carried with us from Saddam's time, cultural violence, wars, UN sanctions. By 2003, there were no middle class, zero middle class. How could you build a state without middle class?
Look, I agree.
So this is what this is the scale of the baggage and the challenge we have to carry with us. I think it's not just that we need the credit. We need also to realize we can't be a bit more efficient. We need support of the United States. We need others. The U.S. shouldn't be fatigued about Iraq. The U.S. should embrace Iraq now. But we're saying no troops on the ground, for example.
Are you suggesting that you are not asking the United States for more troops?
We are saying each case on their own merits. We certainly don't want an
Are you
open check.
asking the United States
The
for more
Iranians
troops?
gave us an open check of support, and we said no. Why did we say no to the Iranians when they said troops, air force, anything you want? We said no. Why do the later they have this immediate national threat to them, ISIS us to them, that makes it to us. Our religious sites are as sacred to them as it is to us. Why did we say no to the Iranian? Why did we say some yes to the American advisors and so on? And why do we have a strategic framework agreement with the United States?
This is true, but you and I agree. We just talked about it a while ago here, not privately, but here.
Okay.
That this campaign to recapture Mosul is going to be protracted.
Yes, of course.
It's going to be costly. It could last months, maybe more than a year, maybe even more, maybe even 2 years. And the only way, and in interim, just think in those terms. ISIS is planting cells just about everywhere, throughout Europe, throughout the Middle East. Every day that are still there, operating as an independent entity in Iraq and in Syria, they are continuing to spread elsewhere, thinking already ahead, if we lose here, we're going to exist everywhere. Now, if this is the situation today, so any military expert will tell you, to prevent that from spreading, so we need to cut them, we need to destroy them as soon as possible. So it's easy to sit down and say, I'm not criticizing you, for any government, Iraq and others, to say, well, we really don't need troops, we're going to do it on our own. But you also know that the consequences of that could be extremely dire to the region, to Europe, and elsewhere. Which means the sooner you can cut, so to speak, the head of the snake, well, look what's going on in Europe today. What's going on throughout Africa?
Whose interest are you talking about here?
You said the international community.
I have responsibility for my state. I have responsibility for my people.
No, but you just said yourself it's interconnected. That is, I would think that Iraq should be demanding, asking other Arab states. ISIS is against Saudi Arabia just the same. ISIS is against, ISIS fighting anyone
We
who
have
does not.
fatwas coming from Saudi Arabia.
This is true,
Ulama.
but this.
We have money coming in from the Gulf countries. We've got the jihadists who are mostly from those parts of the world and North Africa. Why would we want those states to come in with their armies, with their baggage, with their politics into an area, while for decades or so we had democracies, only the United States stood by us, Iran stood by us. Why do we want those countries to happen while the United States embraced new Iraq, while Iran accepted Iraq?
But you are welcoming.
Why would we do that?
But you are welcoming for example, the support, the Air Force of Jordan.
Not in
Jordan is
Iraq,
participating.
Not in Iraq.
Well, they are participating.
Syria, that's a different issue. We said the Syrian situation needs to be managed.
But do you really can divorce the situation between Syria and Iraq when it comes to ISIS?
As much as we can manage our politics, we want the other countries to respect what we want. The US does respect that. Troops are there with our orders and with our support in an orderly manner, in a fashion, in an organized manner. Other countries need to respect that sovereignty. The whole US engagement in Iraq was primarily about Iraqis getting some freedom, getting some sovereignty away from dictatorship. Then we have a big win in what we have. We still have a lot of challenges. The US has to pay a lot of casualties for that. We have to pay 10 or 20 times more casualties for that. So we pay both a lot. Why do we need to squander it? Because some other Gulf countries feel insecure themselves, but they're willing to support
but
the jihadist fatwas from others and so on.
But Iraq, however, is paying the price. I mean, the longer the fight against ISIS continues, Iraq is going to pay a higher and higher price for it.
Sure.
Now, if given the choice, suppose they come to you, the European community or the United States, we're willing to introduce 25, 30,000 ground troops in order to defeat ISIS as soon as possible. Are you going to refuse them?
That's not for me, it's for my government to decide.
But personally.
But what we have said is we've said we need massive support and training, ammunition, intelligence, others. Teach us, help us, train us to manage the situation. We also know one thing, which I think people need to recognize that as well. Here in the United States and other European countries, they know that when they get engaged without due consideration to the local politics, fingers get burned. We don't want that. Why do we need to go back to the 2003 aspect, even with the United States? Here you have issues, you have your own, specifically with President Obama, first term and then second term, which was clear, no Iraq. Why do we need to do that while we know that this will be adverse impact on both of us long term? You're not asking for it, we're not asking for it, we're willing to pay all the heavy price of our young ones being killed for liberating our country from ISIS. And by the way, the irony of it, it's not just an Iraqi problem, this is a global problem. The majority of these jihadists are not Iraqis. They're from all over the world.
This is true, but that's exactly
to
the
that
point.
effect, we're paying the price, our infrastructure and everything else, and on top of that, you want me to give you a blank check without due consideration of any type of guarantee that this will be managed with a big baggage of heritage from our neighbors, primarily, who view the world through a sectarian narrative, and they think that the world should be based on their own Salafist mindset.
But if it
sending their jihadists across the borders, that's unacceptable to us.
But you just said
I think we have the right to
this is true, but you just said it's a global problem. If it is a global problem, obviously we know it's affecting Europe, for example.
Do something about it in Europe.
Yeah.
Why do you want to
Well, but let me say this: if the European community is affected by it, look what happened in Paris.
Yes, but they still.
But if suppose they say come to Iraqi government and say we do not want, we cannot tolerate ISIS anymore, and we want to do something about it.
Do something about it in Bradford or other places.
What do you want them? What do you want them to do about it?
Go and address these challenges in there. These, by the way, and mean, the irony of it is these jihadists from the communities, the diaspora communities in West or United States or others, they don't have any economical challenge or anything else. So surely it tells you that there are issues on those communities we need to be addressed as well. So we need to have a global coexistence, a global view that we need to learn about these issues, why people are unhappy, what are the key issues, and address some of the root causes. In our region, we have population growth, urbanization, other issues which we need to address, good governance. Why do we have this threat to states?
You know, the concern we have, I have, and many people have, you are welcoming Air Force, you know, the Air Forces of various countries, European, American, and even some from the Arab state, to help in the fight against ISIS. They are very welcome. Am I right?
We've said no to the Arab countries. We've
Jordan,
said no to the Iran. We've said yes to European countries.
Not to Iran, but you accepted Jordan, for example.
But I would challenge
but that's not important.
It's primarily in Syria.
Well, in any event.
Primarily in Syria.
So you're accepting that kind of support. Now you're making a distinction between support from the Air Force versus the ground troops. But the problem is this: if you are suggesting that you will not, or you don't want ground troops, but you are prepared to pay the price if this war has become so protracted, takes 2 years, how many people are going to die, both Iraqis in particular, to be able to defeat ISIS with the current manpower that you have, let's say with American training?
I have no numbers. I don't think anybody will have numbers.
But any military strategist will have to sit down and think in terms of, this is my enemy. I want to defeat this enemy. What is going to take? You can't start a war.
But these enemies, my point is started with, these enemies are in our homelands. They're not overseas. So we need to be careful that our infrastructure, our population, our tribes and others can still have a viable coexistence thereafter. So this is the key issue of it. It's a very painful process, I give you that, but at the same time I would say it can only be done via having methodological, thorough approach to it.
Yeah, but that logic...
That's what it requires. There is, as I said, there are irreversible damages to taking place. I give you that as well.
Yeah, but you know, I just want to put yourself in the place of 2 or 3 Iraqi generals who are involved in this campaign, right?
But
what
yes,
kind of...
True, but we have what you might call democratic systems, so that those who make decisions are the politicians whom the people elected, not the generals who have easy solutions.
So are you saying...
using force as the only method. That's why we have democracy.
So are you saying that Abadi is sitting in Baghdad and he's telling the generals this is how you have to go about it, without asking what your strategy?
Of course not.
What?
We have close cooperation with the United States on the ground.
That's what I'm saying is,
with other countries.
what I'm saying really, I go back and I'm going to drop the subject because since we solved the problem, so we don't have to deal with it. But the truth is this: my concern, the concern of so many, is that you know, as long as this battle continue against ISIS, thousands, tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of people will die. Be that Iraqis, European, from just about everywhere. And that's the problem. I don't see international resolve. I don't see international leadership. We sit down and say, this is enemy, this is our enemy. It's an enemy of the international community.
They don't see this as a global war.
They do not see it this way, and hence you have not this kind of leadership.
I don't dispute that.
Well, this is going to be a problem that you're going to have to deal with it.
We pay Iraqis.
You're paying the price.
Iraqis feel extremely annoyed and sort of unhappy that they paying a high casualty for this. But at the same time, they know that if they want other countries to come in with their troops and so on, it usually doesn't work out well from all sides. So we don't want to create that problem. As I said before, Iran next door to us, they said, we'll give you troops, we'll give you air force, anything else. And we've said no, because we know there is a baggage and there is a cost associated with it. But at the same time, Iraqis feel that they are sometimes feel alone in this fight, and that the Syrian brothers are paying a lot heavy price as well. And to that effect, yes, there is an obligation on the international community. There is a need for the international community to take on this challenge, this global challenge of jihadist Salatism, and say we need to do something about it. We read reports which talk about the whole problem, but nobody says, well, this country's ideology is the problem, you need to address it. Or that the money is coming from the Gulf countries, you need to put a stop to it. Or that the fatwa is coming from the Gulf countries, they need to challenge it. People don't do that because of their interest.
But
we pay a lot.
Can you translate when you say international support? Can you translate that to what? What kind of support you want? We both agree that the international community has felt lack.
We have financial challenges now with oil prices. What we've conducted this war while our income has reduced by more than 50%.
What beside that? What sort of support are you looking for?
We need training. We need significant training. We need to really look at how to go about better governance in these issues. For example, these liberated areas, we need stabilization forces thereafter for the government to do, NGOs, infrastructure and so on, and we need the development of infrastructure for these areas. What's the point of us liberating their towns while we can't build them schools or hospitals, which was destroyed or which was derelict as a result of this? So we need these for people who are displaced to go back to their homes. You have the same problem in Jordan, you have the same problem in Lebanon, you have the same problem in Turkey. They need to go back to their Syrian homes so that they can play part in development of their countries.
But you know, given
you know more about the Palestinian refugees than anybody else. How much is that destructive in the long term to the region? We don't want to repeat that.
Well, in this particular case, I think the Palestinian, although I am in favor of solution, in favor of two states, as you well know, but I think the Palestinian leadership has deliberately prolonged the Palestinian refugee problem. They could have resolved it 50 years ago, but they didn't want
to prolong it.
Pardon?
We don't want to.
Not you, the Palestinian leadership going back.
In relation to ISIS, in relation to the whole situation in Syria, we have internally displaced refugees. We have about 250,000 Syrian refugees, internally displaced significant number. We want them to go back to their homes as soon as possible.
Let's take a little turn and go to another area a little bit. And now we have a serious conflict between Iran and Saudi Arabia. Do you agree that there is a serious conflict between the two countries?
I think 3 countries have serious problems among themselves which need to be fixed: Turkey, Iran, and Saudi Arabia.
Okay, now there is a de facto proxy war going on between Saudi Arabia and Iran. In Yemen, for example, there's a de facto war between the two sides, even in Syria itself. You agree?
Yes.
Okay. To what extent do you feel this is impact on the fight against ISIS?
I think it's one level it's a manifestation of that fight. In another level, the Cold War of the type created problems, ripple effect elsewhere. I also think in one level it's a politics and power projection, not ideology.
But then, you know, Iraq has wonderful, very good relations with Iran, wouldn't you say?
Yes, of course.
So what is Prime Minister Abadi is telling Khomeini or Rouhani what to do? How to deal with this problem? How do you advise them?
They ask us for advice. We tell the Americans, we tell the...
What kind of advice? What kind of advice do you think?
We tell them, let me give examples. On the nuclear deal, we said we support it because that will reduce tension in the region. Our focus is reducing tension. If we think that, for example, the Iranian going through the Saudi embassies will increase tension because of the execution of the clergy, beheading of the clergy in Saudi, then we will say to the Iranians that's wrong, and we'll say to the Saudis, you're increasing the tension. If the Saudis going to Yemen and increasing tension in the region, and we're saying this is the wrong solution.
So but it's okay for Iran to send its militia and planes and not planes, all the equipment to Yemen. And do you really expect the Saudis not to get involved, given that?
I just said that. I just said we told the Iranians, for example, that they need to reduce tension in the region because it's already being engulfed. The problem we have is sometimes short-termisms overrides the long-term strategy of coexistence and development for the region. A zero-sum game. A zero-sum game doesn't help the Saudis or the Turks or or anybody else. So to that effect, we've said to all parties, reduce the tension. We have too much at stake here. Technology and other things are bringing us together. We need to look at that way. And this is what we've been trying. That's why, by the way, put the Iranians at the side. We are the only country in the region. Good relationship with the United States, excellent relationship with the United States, excellent relationship with Iran. Because we said we're not threatening and we need to look at the commonalities of the issues. So
Well,
that's what we'll continue with that policy.
Let's leave this for a moment aside. There is a convergence of all of these conflicts, and they are interrelated in one form or another.
They feed into each other.
Yes, and so let's say the Prime Minister or the President of the United States sat down with you and asking you, these are all conflicts taking place. How do you begin mitigating? Where do you start?
I think that there are key issues which we need to address. For example, sectarianism is becoming a theme of polarizing societies. We need to reduce what feeds into sectarianism. Fatwas, money, IT technology, utilization of social media, and so on. That's one aspect.
But before that, how would you do that?
You need to convince them that they will have benefit in addressing these issues. If they want to use these issues as a tool for influence, such as what's taking place in Syria, then I can assure you Syria will not have a solution for a long time if every side of those who feed into Syria think they will benefit by increasing the fatwas of money or weapons and so on. They need to realize that this is not useful to any side. It's counterproductive for them, not just to the other side as well. So they need to do that. You also need to have looking at the needs of the people, which is to do with stability, democracy, other things of that nature. You need to do that. You can't just force it on them. People have to embrace
But then
it.
there was this experiment, the United States for democratic form of government in Egypt didn't work. Libya is still in shambles. Syria is not working. So you're talking about democracy, but it's not working.
No, I tell you what. No, it's complicated. If you say to me, if you enforce democracy on Egypt or Iraq or others, in 5 years it will be good, I will say then you haven't even scratched the surface of those societies.
Exactly.
And unfortunately, from a U.S. perspective, for whatever reasons, they try to have a binary view of our region. Our region is not binary, it's complicated, it's myriad of factors play part into each other. That's another aspect. So your expectations need to be right. You need to have when senators and congressmen ask me about the region, the first thing I tell them is have a long sight or long view of this aspect of it. Don't have high expectations and thinking that you can resolve the issue by military or by force or by other single means. It has to be all kinds of utilization of democracy, soft power, and so on. That's on your side. You have to facilitate for platforms for discussions to take place. On the regional side, don't expect imposing a solution on them. They have to embrace it.
Of course.
They have to embrace it. We are still not there in making sure that we are part of the problem. We still think that the problem is other. It's the Israeli, Palestinian problem, or it's the Iranian problem, or it's other things. Countries of the region still don't embrace that they are part of the problem and they need to self-correct so that they play part. I give you that. And therefore, I cannot even assure you that we are trending in the right direction in the very next few years. Because people still sometimes recognize, acknowledge that they are part of the problem which they need to play part.
This is really the problem. We participate in all kinds of think tanks. And wonderful papers are written about how to de-radicalize the extremists, what to do about this and this. And this is a long list of wonderful measures that need to be taken. But the truth of the matter, then you ask the question, okay, who's going to do that? How much going to take? Who's participating? This is what I'm talking about here.
The devil is in the details.
So in the details, but there are not a single country, I dare say, not one.
It's a global problem.
Is willing to say, okay, here's step one. We are going to put our money where our mouth is in this particular area. You don't see that. So what is the
No,
prospect?
actually, the US tried it in Iraq, and it didn't work out for them.
Of course it won't.
We know why, because they thought this might be, all you need to just give them some more democracy. Well, they haven't been learned how to make the decisions for generations. Saddam didn't allow them to think for their own. So they needed time. We need to have that view. And exactly my point. That's why we're saying against ISIS and everything else. We need to go through that making process ourselves. We have to develop. We have to know what it takes to be democratic and develop and so on.
Exactly.
We need help. We need help. We need others to acknowledge that they can contribute to the problem. If you tell me all you need to do is just make sure that you build a relationship with Saudi Arabia and everything else is fixed, I would say sorry.
Well, of course.
You're oversimplifying the issue.
Look.
Same with Iran. Just close the relationship with Iran and side on with our side and things will fix. I'm sorry. He's our neighbor. All the issues, all the
Well, of
tribal
course,
issues,
only if we're
cultural issues. What
no,
do we do
no,
about that?
we're not suggesting that.
No, I'm not saying. I'm saying people
Yeah.
view us in a binary way, expect us to act in a binary way, and then they say, "Well, that's all you need."
So you and I agree, and there's no question that
We
it's
agree a lot today.
we agree about a great deal. We agree that the introduction of any kind of democratic form of government, and ask the Iraqis, the Lebanese, the not Lebanon in particular, but the Egyptian, the Saudis to swallow it like it was a quick fixes. That's not going to work. So you need long transitional period, but has to be accompanied at a minimum with significant economic development. We agree on that.
Yes, we also have issues. We have the youth. We have the youth issue to address.
Exactly, and you have
we have the technology issue to address.
Exactly.
We
So-
have the whole issues of people now using social media. They are extremely aware of what's going on in the world. So they could see next door have the privileges. Why do they not have it themselves? So we have this issue.
All of this is absolutely true. Now, I would like you to sit down with the group trying to figure out a solution to Syria. What would you suggest? What kind of government you think Syria ought to establish in order to be able to stabilize it, say over a period of time? What would you do? What kind of political system would you like to introduce?
As much as I said, Iraq pre-2003 is different than post-2003. And Iraq pre-2014 with ISIS is different than post-2003. Syria as well, pre-2011 is different to 2000. So Syria has to acknowledge that there has to be significant political change internally, separations of, what do you call it? Power sharing has to become a significant factor. The cost associated with the destruction is in itself a significant problem for them. If Syria now, I've been told the numbers, I'm not 100% sure, but it does make sense. If Syria now want to go and stop the war, and they want to use the same rate of development pre-2011, it takes them 25 years to get to the same position now.
And over, I'm told,
25
over
years.
100 billion, maybe
If
more.
25 years at the same rate of economical development in 2011 for them to get to the same point in 2011. So it tells you that there is a significant destruction to infrastructure and therefore social and so on. So the Syrians have to acknowledge that they need each other. They have to also acknowledge that ISIS is not the solution. Jabhat al-Nusra is not the solution.
Of course not.
Those who sided with Assad were not just Shia or Alawiyat. There were Christians, Kurds, others sided with them. Which tells you that the problem is a bit more complicated than the binary view.
But
And sorry, my final point is, countries such as Turkey and others can play a significant role if they want to be positive and want to close this issue or get some closure. At this moment, I can't see any closure on Syria because every side thinks the other has to give up rather than them giving up. That's the problem we have.
this is, no, but let's theoretically at least. They are sitting, they agree on a ceasefire, it's been violated a number of times already. It may collapse altogether. But let's suppose a ceasefire will hold. And let's suppose they sit down, the rebels, the government, and interlocutors in between, the United States, Russia, Iran, whoever has an interest in Syria. What sort of, can you envision a solution to, what kind of political order ought to be put in place in order to have a functioning
Yes.
government.
Historically, all conflicts come to an end.
Okay.
So you know you will get there, but how much casualty you have to pay, how much reversible or irreversible damage taking place, how much civilians and others, or in the Syrian situation, how much humanity's history is being destroyed with ISIS destruction or the actual civil war. That's the cost we have to cost-benefit analyzation. That's one problem we have. So we're talking about how fast can we want to fix this? How the least damage we want to do that? I still think that Syria has so many players in itself becomes complicated because you have so many players with no single player with the dominant force. And countries such as the United States and others, we're not sure do they get engaged or they're not to get engaged. That also created
What's going to take? Well, we know there's scores of terrorist groups, scores, not 10 or 20, more than 50, 60 operating in Syria today, from 10 to 1,000. So we have all of this.
It's a vacuum.
There's a huge vacuum, and everybody is converging into this vacuum, playing their own game. Now, how are you going to stabilize a place like this? With the best of intention. What you are saying is will not be easy, and there's no question it's not going to be easy. So what should we expect then?
No, you have big players such as Turkey. You have Russia, who played a role now. Iran, Hezbollah, who had an operation.
But you are mentioning countries that in fact perpetuated deliberately the civil war in Syria. Iran was supplying Assad weapons, equipment.
Expect me to have a magic wand and fix
No, I don't want you to have a magic one. But
I'm telling
because
you
you're
that
mentioning the very culprit who prolonged this war.
From a practitioner point of view, I'm telling you, you need those entities on the ground. You need them to understand that there's the cost associated with their policies, adverse policies to the Syrian. And by the way, even if you carry on with the situation, even if you divide Syria into whatever you want, what do you do with the refugees? What do you do with the Jordanian threat?
Ambassador, my argument is not with you. I know you have the best intention. No, seriously, going back to Syria for a moment. Russia vetoed 3 resolutions, United Nations resolution, preventing any kind of effort to resolve the conflict in Syria going back how many years? 4 years. They've been supplying Assad with weapons, killing machine, day in and day out. So Iran has been doing the same thing. So let's just, even if we stop there, not to speak of other Nusra Front and Al-Qaeda and on and on and on. Now, any kind of, but if you take these 2 major players, Iran and Russia, who have been exercising tremendous influence in Syria for many years, decades for that matter. Are they not going to agree to any solution that's going to diminish their influence in Syria? Do we agree on that?
To an extent, but I'm saying that...
Do you think they're going to sacrifice?
There's a good news there. No single power has the monopoly of force.
No, we don't need monopoly.
No, I'm saying, no, we do. We need some order. We need some order. My point is, the good news is that everybody knows they need the other. Now, do we have a stalemate? Yes, of some type. Stalemate is good in the sense of people recognize they need to do something about it. Iraq, for example, from day 1, 2011, at the annoyance of the US and other countries, they said, well, we should help us against Assad. We said, you're only asking us to fuel further the fire. And we said no. We said no to all countries. Prime Minister Maliki, we mentioned a few times, at the White House in 2011, told President Obama and others, I will give you 3 years and this issue will not be fixed. Because we know how complicated Syria is. It's very similar to our situation. We have an in-depth understanding of these societies. And we said this won't be fixed in a few weeks, as you expected. And that's what we expect. We still think that Syria's situation is much more dangerous, even than Iraq. By the way, even than Iraq.
I agree.
We learned it, we've gone through that painful process, we got the oil wealth, we had the ability to manage this. We had 20 years of people being in opposition till they have some understanding of the politics. In Syria, you have everything on a crash course. Even the oppositions can't even recognize each other. That they won't sit down with each other.
Which means this is going to be very long.
I don't have a magic wand for Syria.
No. So here, I mean, again, for example, when the Russians realized that Bashar has been losing a great deal of ground, they came in force in order to strengthen him, and so they did exactly what, in order to not to save the life of Syrian people, but precisely to make sure that their position, their influence in Syria is sustained post-Assad himself. They're insisting on Assad to be part of the solution until such time where they no longer need him. So be that Iran or Russia and others.
Why are you only mentioning the Russian and the Iranians? Why don't you look at the Gulf, the Turkey, the European?
Well, Turkey, I was actually hoping. I think.
Unfortunately, all thought that this issue would be resolved without an active role. And you started your whole point across both theaters, across both countries, is that these are global problems which requires global solutions. I give you that. So the US and others have responsibility, and they thought that their inaction is not an action. And in reality, their inaction is an action.
Okay, well that's what I'm really trying to get to. When you say responsibility, but then you are saying no ground troops, no, we need trainers, we need this.
You said for
yeah.
Iraqis.
So do you feel that President Obama made a mistake in Syria by not intervening earlier?
I think this is for the American audience.
No, well, are there any recording here or any television or something?
On the record.
It's not until on the record. Well, I can tell you, he should have. I don't mind to say.
You have the power of the vote. I have the responsibility of the ambassador.
So just go back to Syria. You know, we in the academia try to figure out solutions, albeit. Do you feel that there is a prospect of establishing a sort of representative government in Syria that reflects the demographic makeup of the country, as a transitional government for 6-7 years, and to focus on security, building the structure, focus on the economic development, on security, on opening the schools, clinics?
At this moment, I wish I could say I'm very hopeful, but at this moment I still think there is an expectation on the stakeholders who may not have played the best of roles, on the other to give up. So to that effect, this attrition approach will continue. There is another side which is relevant to the theme she talked about, which is managing complexity. Unfortunately, as somebody who practices diplomacy or politics, I get more and more convinced every day that even countries are finding it difficult to manage the complexities of the world. We need to do better, and we need to focus more in resolving conflict issues, whether this conflict is environment or it's physical or ideological, such as ISIS and others. Managing complexity is a challenge for us.
So in the case of Syria, when you look at conflict resolution, and you ask yourself, well, how any given conflict may be resolved, you can say, well, if the people can reach a point of exhaustion and realize that continuing the fight is not going to improve their position. That is one way. Do you feel, for example, that this, or if they fight further, they may improve their position? At what stage do you think Syria is at this point? They will continue to fight until they reach a point of exhaustion?
There is a problem here, in the sense of those who fight on ideological base look forward to be killed. So they have a problem there. So that's one aspect. Those who fight and nutrition of a type in relation to weapons provision, those countries, primarily the Gulf countries, they're not short of money, which means they increase that problem, unfortunately. So they need to do something better. Neighboring countries such as Turkey sees the PKK as a bigger threat than ISIS, for example. That creates another problem for us in the region. We need to align our interests and prioritize. And we need to see eye to eye on these issues. So I would say that your issues of people who fed up because they fought too much, we're still not there.
You're not there yet?
I don't think so.
Well, no, I agree with you. That is, in this particular case, they have not reached that point of exhaustion, so to speak. They will continue to fight.
It's very tragic.
It is tragic. It is absolutely tragic. And just one word on Turkey. You mentioned a number of times Turkey, and And I don't have much faith in Turkey. Do you?
Of course I have faith. They are a significant country. They have a heavyweight. They seem to have a role. They have a significant role to play. They are integral to the stability of the region. And to that effect, yes, they are the only Muslim European country in a massive size. So to that effect, yes, they have a role to play.
Yeah, by that definition, all countries in that area will have a role to play.
But Turkey has a big role to play.
But Turkey is going to do only what is best for Turkey, first and foremost. I mean, if you know Erdogan, you would come to that conclusion very quickly.
I didn't even comment on President Obama. Do you expect me to comment on President Obama?
You know, I love chatting with you. You know that. This is the kind of conversation we have in his office. Yeah, and the staff would come in. What's going on? I'm just kidding. But we love to converse, and you're terrific, really terrific. I hope I didn't give you a hard time.
No, of course. I hope I haven't given you a hard time. I tried to take it easy on you.
The only reason I really didn't give you a hard time because I know you're flying now for the next 15 hours, and you need to relax a little bit. But again, I really thank you so much.